to join you at the African Prosperity Dialogue 2026. I send my sincere appreciation to the African Prosperity Network for convening this timely and forward-looking platform at such a defining moment in Africa's journey. We meet at a time when the promise of the African Continental Free Trade Area must move decisively from policy to practice, from aspirations to impact, and from borders as barriers to borders as bridges for shared prosperity. Today, I speak from the perspective of internal security, migration governance, and border management, not as an obstacle to integration, but as a critical enabler of Africa's economic transformation. The theme for today, empowering small and medium-scale enterprises, women and youth in Africa's single market through innovation, collaboration, and trade, resonates deeply. The African Continental Free Trade Area, AfTA, represents the most ambitious economic integration project in our history, with the potential to unlock trillions in values, create millions of jobs, and lift countless families out of poverty. At its heart are our small and medium enterprises, the lifeblood of African economies. Yet for these SMEs to fully thrive in a continental single market, we must confront and overcome the very real frictions at our borders. Security concerns, migration governance, and border management challenges are things that we need to look at critically. Madam Chair, there is a persistent misconception that security and free movement are competing goals. Let me state clearly that they are not. Without security, trade cannot flourish. And without orderly mobility, integration cannot succeed. A free flow of traders and goods should not compromise national and regional security. Instead, applying smart, coordinated, and technology-enabled approaches facilitate trade while enhancing safety and trust. Across our continent, small and medium enterprises, particularly those led by women and young people, form the backbone of cross-border trade. Yet, too many of these enterprises face delay, harassment, unclear procedures, and fragmented enforcement at our borders. These frictions raise concerns, weaken competitiveness, and undermine the very objective of the AfTA. First, let us address security and cross-border trade issues. Africa's borders are vast and often porous. If I give you, for example, in Ghana, we have 48 legitimate crossing points, and yet there are over 250 unapproved crossing points that are normally used by persons that sometimes pose danger to all of us. And I'm very sure, since you came to Accra, you might have seen some of the very uncomfortable situations that we have on our street, where children are trafficked into Accra and left on our street to beg. Yes, we need to ensure free movement, but this movement must be checked. Knowing very well the threat to all of us, terrorism and other crimes, whether narcotics or cybercrime, we need to be concerned. How do we promote free movement of legitimate traders and goods without opening doors to threats like trafficking, terrorism, or illicit flows? The answer lies in risk-based, intelligence-led border management. By lifting from blanket controls to targeted interventions, using data analytics, joint patrol, and shared intelligence, we can facilitate legitimate trade while intercepting risk. And let me say, since November last year, we have been able to incorporate into our border management control system so that any individual that buys ticket to come to Accra will get to know who is boarding and what seat you are sitting even before the flight takes off. This is just to enhance what we are doing. We are currently working to make sure that this system is equally integrated into our land borders, sea, and other crossing points, just to make ease so that we are targeting those persons of interest and not just to bulk everybody that is coming into our country. Regional cooperation, such as through one-stop border post and harmonized protocols, has already shown promise in reducing delays and corruption. When security agencies, customs, and trade regulators collaborate as partners rather than silos, we reduce friction for small and medium enterprises and strengthen collective security. Currently, myself and my colleague, the trade minister, have set up a small committee that involves almost all the actors just to ensure that we minimize the frustration in our borders. But this cannot be done by us alone because we have neighbors. We have partners that are across our region. And I'm happy to see some of our ambassadors that last week, our President, His Excellency John Dramani Mahama, invited his colleagues from the sub-region for us to think through how can we share intelligence? How can we share information? How can we harmonize and collaborate to make the true free movement of people and goods really, really possible within our sub-region? The second thing that we need to be looking at is the non-tariff barriers and enforcement gaps. That remains among the greatest hurdles for SMEs at borders. Informal traders, many of them women and youth, face harassment, excessive documentation, bribes, and arbitrary confiscation. These are not just inconveniences, they are barriers to economic inclusion. Practical solutions include training border officials on traders' rights, implementing transparent procedures, and establishing grievances mechanism. Security and custom agencies must work hand in hand with trade regulators to streamline processes while maintaining vigilance. Simplified trade regimes, already piloted in some regional economic communities, demonstrate that reducing administrative burdens can boost cross-border trade volumes drastically without undermining enforcement. Third, the ECOWAS Protocol on Free Movement of Persons offers valuable lessons for the continent. Since its adoption, it has enabled visa-free travel for up to 90 days across the West Africa, facilitating labor mobility, trade, and cultural exchange. Successes include increased inter-regional trade, remittances, and people-to-people connection. However, limitations persist, and these include incomplete implementation of resident and established rights, security concerns from misuse of criminal elements, and inadequate infrastructure at our borders. These challenges highlight the need for stronger monitoring, capacity building, and complementary measures like harmonized identity verification. ECOWAS shows that regional free movement can work, but it requires sustained political will, resources, and adaptive governance to address the drawback. Building on these lessons, we must advance towards expanding regional framework into a continental-wide custom union under the AFTA. This means progressively harmonizing standards, aligning border procedures, and fostering mutual trust among nations. Ladies and gentlemen, the ECOWAS Protocol on Free Movement of Persons remains one of Africa's most ambitious integration instruments. Its achievements are clear. Its achievements are very clear. Visa-free entry across the sub-region, increased labor mobility, and expanded informal and formal trade. Yet we must also be candid about its limitations, including uneven implementation, weak data sharing, abuse of travel privilege, and security concerns linked to transnational crime. These lessons for continental integration is simple and unavoidable. Free movement must be matched with strong institutions, shared standard, and trusted identity system. AfCFTA offers Africa a historic opportunity to move beyond fragmented regional arrangement towards a coherent continental trade and custom framework. This transition must be gradual, coordinated, and data-driven. It should begin with harmonized border procedures, mutual recognition of documents, interoperable migration and customs system, and strengthen cooperation among security and trade ministries. Integration cannot be built on policy declaration alone. It must be built on operational readiness. The call for a visa-free Africa is growing, and rightly so. Mobility is central to innovation. Entrepreneurs, tourism, and cultural exchange. However, visa liberalization must be responsible, phased, and evidence-based. It must be supported by shared watch lists, real-time data exchange, standardized entry and exit system, and robust identity verification mechanism. A visa-free Africa must not be a blind Africa. It must be a smart, connected, and accountable Africa. Let me say, when I had the privilege to serve on the Pan-African Parliament for almost a decade and a half, I had always argued on the floor of Pan-African Parliament that we, the politicians, do not need the African passport. It is our citizens that really need the African passport to be able to move. Because apparently, almost every politician has a diplomatic passport and has easy access to be able to move around. Why do we emphasize on an African passport that is given to only the political class and the technocrats? Why not our citizens? I want to take this opportunity to urge the AU, the African Union, to focus on making sure that we have this documentation for our citizens so that they are able to freely move across the continent.